I see Christmas candles on a Christmas tree.
What's all this crazy question they're asking me? This is the craziest party that could ever be. Don't turn on the lights, because I don't want to
Miracles
see.
recorded. This is the first one, and the writer of the gospel puts it at the beginning. It's kind of one of the first things he does with his disciples. It's like he's gathering them now that they're going to a wedding. Why on earth is the first miracle turning water into wine? It seems like that's almost inappropriate. I mean, how many people deal with alcoholism in the world today? How many people have died from alcohol-related car accidents in the world? How many people's lives have been destroyed by alcohol? And here Jesus is turning, at a party, basically, a wedding reception, turning water to wine. Why?
Well, just like most of the Bible, I would say it could be a simple little answer. People could look at it one way, or they could get really deep. And knowing me, I'm gonna go deep with it. So when I knew I was gonna have to answer this question, and I've enjoyed this story in the past, and I've heard some really good sermons on it from some different perspectives. But I guess I'll start with one, we have to take into context what is the surrounding. And the surrounding is there's a lot of Greek. Who wrote this book? This is the book of John. This is the only book of the Bible where this story is in. So John knows he's writing to a certain group of people where it's the Greeks, the Greek culture. And you have to understand the Greek culture of the statues and all the things that are around there. There's a Greek god that's called Dionysus, and who Dionysus would bring wine and bring a new life, and then they would do these rituals. So when you start to go and start to understand what wine represents to the Greek cultures of Dionysus and wine to the Greeks, he knew he was writing to this certain demographic of people.
So he's basically telling them the thing that your goddess, your main god, does, our guy also did.
Exactly. And he's saying, so what they would look forward to the Dionysus festival, when you go and Google this stuff and research it, it says he would return to Earth, and everything that good came from Earth came from Dionysus. So they would celebrate him, especially wine, because it came from the earth and stuff. And they would celebrate that he would bring new life to everything. And John knew that he's like, well, Jesus Christ brings the real new life. New life. And the key word is new. So new life, this whole concept of new life. So wine is so much more symbolic than just wine. For instance, even when I looked into the Bible, wine is mentioned 247 times. 40 of the times it's negative, 145 times it's positive, and 62 times it's neutral. And rather than go into each of them, it's obvious that wine is a very big symbolic part of the gospel.
And life. I mean, think about the first guy or gal that accidentally fermented some grapes, and they drink it and they're like, what is this crazy thing I'm feeling right now? It's an interesting, wine is an interesting thing. It literally transforms everything. You drink some of it and everything looks different. It's weird. It's an interesting metaphor.
Exactly.
It actually does.
So think about that. Like you said, wine, it transforms you. So I would argue that if we have eyes to see or ears to hear, can we understand the upside down gospel? Can we understand this kingdom, this transformative, this paradoxical? Can two things be two different things at the same time? Can we see and hear how Jesus is? Why is his first one? So what I'm going to say is this. Why is it wine? Well, I'm going to just jump into it. Well, in rabbinic law, so I might not be saying these words right. You do this research. This is what's great about trying to be a follower of Christ. You go and you do your best to research into it. I call this meditating. You're regurgitating. So in rabbinic law, it's all about purification. And it's all about understanding that there are certain processes of purification, not just with food, but with water and things like that. So stone stone was a certain thing that they thought that could be purified, where when you put the water, but they would put the water in the stone, and in the rabbinic law, they would do what's called mikvah. Mikvah is a purification process where they would fill up the brims of these stone jars and then put it down into water up until the brim. And once it touches the top of the brim, then it starts to purify, and you're immersing yourself into this water to get purified. Immersing. John the Baptist, you start to understand that there's a bigger picture going on here where you have to immerse yourself into something to get purified. So the interesting thing is Jesus said, put this water into these stone jars, that they are there for a reason. So you already know that they're the law, because otherwise those stone jars wouldn't be there. So one part of this is the immersion concept of you got to immerse yourself, and I start to understand, well, where else is immersion? Well, obviously baptism in this concept of, okay, well, Jesus's first miracle was turning water, which is one thing, and then suddenly transformative, it's becoming wine. So my first thought is that's transformation. And then when Jesus says, you must be born again. But I looked up transformation in the Bible, and it talks about becoming a new person, new wineskin. Romans 12:2. Do not be fashioned to this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. 2 Corinthians 3:18. But when all things is unbelief, behold the reflecting of like mirror of the glory of the Lord. You are being transformed into the same image of the glory. John 3:30. To grow and change as well, you need to show God your desire to be more like Jesus, be transformed. Philippians 4:8. The Bible verses about changing your mindset will transform you. Colossians 3:5. If you want to change, you need to pray against doing ungodliness. Like, it goes on and on in the Bible about this concept of transformation. So the first thing I see and I think about when water into wine, and before we get to what it is, like wine, it's just the transformation and the purification process. And then what was the very first, some people would say Jesus's very first words of his ministry, meaning have to do the righteousness of God, which shows you he already humbled himself and saying, not you, he's like, we are going to